Alright, I know it's been a couple weeks, and so I was going through in my last video, and I messed up big time. Accidentally deleted. I had worked on it for about 3 hours, took about 4 hours to edit the stupid video, and then I lost it all. So, essentially, what I did in that video, I torqued down the connecting rod to the crankshaft, and that's real simple. I'll kind of go over that again, but just letting you guys know what happened. I did do a lot of work. I had a video set for last week, and I completely lost it all. So I had to restart, but there was a few other things I had to take care of in the meantime. So this was put on hold. Today I caught some stuff in the video while I was editing it, and I basically have to remove this head again. I messed up and put the gasket, you can kind of see it, let's see. I put the gasket on 180 off. So the piece that's supposed to be on this side, it's over here, and it's unacceptable. It's going to leak like crazy, and it won't be right. So I have to pull the head. I'm going to have to retorque everything down, reset the valve lash, and essentially the video being deleted doesn't really have any bearing because I have to take it completely apart again. The one thing I did miss is when I pulled the carb off and installed this sweet intake, and this is a true Mikuni. So this will be the carb I'm going to run on it. I actually bought this for the 212 Hemi back here, but I've had some issues too. I ran into an injury early last year that I'm still recovering from. So basically, I'm building this bike to be ready for whenever I'm ready myself. Anyways, I had these brand new parts laying around. Never even ran this carb. I got this from Go-Karts USA. I painted it black. And yeah, I'll have the Billet Flywheel. I painted that one red. This won't be the flywheel cover I'm going to run in there. I'm just got it mocked up for now. And I'm going to run a pulse pump off of there. And I know it's just a 196 in stock, but I'm thinking since I'm going to be running off-road with the torque converter up and down hills, I want the fuel to be running to the bowl. So I got the pulse pump plate. I'll have that mounted there, running off of the valve cover. And essentially that's it. I just want to let you guys know what's going on. I did focus on some kind of lighting system, so I'll go over that as well. I did delete the coil of the charging system since this flywheel doesn't have inner magnets. So I'm going to have to just run a battery, and I created a little beginnings of a wiring harness. And essentially I wanted a full-size battery instead of one of those little drill battery setups, which are really cool. But if I ever replace this engine with electric start, I want a battery that will work, So I'm essentially creating a wiring harness from scratch and leaving room for upgrades in the future. Who knows? Usually mini bikes, they're just as much fun to work on as they are to ride. So, yeah, I gotta tear into this thing and we'll get going. And if you don't want to watch that, just skip ahead to the end, or you want to see the finished product. It's basically gonna look just like this, but I'm gonna go into how I got to where I'm at. Nice and clean in there. Alright, so if you've never pulled one of these heads before, once you get the valve cover off, you have bolt there, here, and here. And to get to these inner ones, you really want a 12 mil deep well. Make sure it's kind of a low profile though. This is an impact, but it's a little thinner here, so fits in there. You got to get next to the rocker arms, and it's kind of tight, so you know what that means. Let's go ahead and get this out of the way so I don't break it. When I put this back together, I did torque it down to 18 foot-pounds. There we go. Alright. I would like to break them loose with a hand tools. And get them the rest of the way with some kind of power tool, because bolts are steel, but they're soft. You can round them. If you round them off, you're kind of SOL. So here you go. Got your valves here, and I lost it in the other video, but these are, I always call these valves. They're not valves. They're dang push rods. Now I kept those in line the whole time. So the exhaust is always exhaust. Intake always the intake. And keep them in line. Say if this is the bottom of the engine, then that's the top of the push rod. You always want to keep that, remember. These parts wear into each other. So I got it at top dead center right now, or at least it was when I put it back. But you can see my problem. This is supposed to be here, and the video I lost, I was editing it and I found that, so got to do all that just to flip this around. Now I'm going to attempt to leave the push rods in, leave everything at top dead center. I already adjusted the valves, and I want to see if I can get it back together the same way. Because if we were working on this on the bike, it'd be a lot easier if you didn't have to drain the oil and pop this cover off, or tip it on its side to keep the oil from coming out. So we're going to mimic that. Just imagine this thing is still on the bike. So here we go. Did all that. Oh, that's just dirt. I'm going to check this gasket for dirt real quick, actually. See a little bit. Got my oily rag here. Since I put it on wrong, it was touching places it shouldn't be. Alright. Alright. Installation of the head is reverse of the removal, as the manuals always say. So I'm gonna, there's two channels on the back here. One rod goes through here, one rod goes there. Make sure you line those up. Oh, one more thing. Make sure you leave these dowels in and they go right back where they came from. That's how everything lines up, and it'll hold the gasket in place. Alright. So it's going to be kind of tricky. I'm having alignment issues. Well, there we go. See, I got push rods popping up. So line up your rocker arms and they'll seat. There you go. Flush. Make sure it's flush. Hang on a second. Alright, let me get one of these started. Top 2 started. Yeah, sitting good. Rocker arms are in there. I have the valve lash set at 0 when I pulled it, so basically you don't want any slop. And I set it at 0. I'm basically going off Redbeard's recommendations. I've been watching him for a few years, and he's pretty knowledgeable in this field. So I'll just go off what he says. Set the valve lash at 0. These engines, you know, they're all machined to fit and everything, but it's an aluminum. Everything's aluminum. So when this thing gets hot, it actually expands. So if you set it at 0, the engine actually heats up, and your valve lash will be around at like a 0.001, which, you know, 0.001. You look, I don't even have a feeler gauge that goes down that small. So there we go. Head's back on. I'm gonna go ahead and torque all 4 of these bolts down to 18 foot-pounds. So I gotta go to 18. This torque wrench I'm using, specifically 1/4 inch snap-on. I borrowed this. I don't own it, so I'm not that bougie. Only tops out at 200, so 18 foot-pounds is 216 inch-pounds. So what I'm gonna do, run it to 200. And then I'm going to do about 1/8 of a turn. I kind of mimic my, when I did the head gasket on my Volkswagen Passat. I know it's not the same, but honestly I'm not too worried about it. I'm going to have to do some jank here though, so 1/4 to 3/8, 3/8 to half, and then back down to a 12 mil. Work with what you got, right? So I'm kind of snug them first. I'm going to go in a crisscross pattern. Sure, always keep your crisscross going. All right. Snug them up evenly before I torque them. Alright. I gotta keep this thing from moving. There we go. Second one. 3. now, stenches are hard to get out when you got greasy hands. So, now this is something, if you don't got a feel for these, I wouldn't recommend just doing this, but I'm going to do it, and if it blows up, then learn from my mistake. Tiny bit. Oh, that's more like a 1/16 of a turn. There we go. It's not a high compression head. The one thing I neglected to mention, I put 22-pound springs in this, which was the whole reason I had to pull the head. I attempted to do the trick where I went through the spark plug hole and hold the valve with a pick. That just wasn't happening with one hand. The 20-pound springs are a lot more stout than I anticipated. So, yeah, head's torqued. Let's get that valve cover back on, and I'll go into some other stuff that I did. When I pulled this thing apart, it had a cheesy plastic cam, which I wasn't a fan of for various reasons. It just didn't seem reliable to me. So I had this 212 back here. That was from a couple years back. I did a build. It's got a hot 265 cam in it. So from Go Power Sports, I took the stock one out of the Hemi 212. I lined it up in here. It fit perfectly. After I torqued down the connecting rod, I gave it a couple, I put everything on. I torqued down the bolts, how they should be factory spec. I think it's also about 18 foot-pounds. When you run higher RPMs, you kind of want to go a little bit over stock. So I gave it a couple test rotations. No clearance issues whatsoever. The valve seems to still be able to adjust. So I'm going to attempt to run the cam from the Predator 212 Hemi in the stock 196. And that'll be a little weird. If it works, I'll be super happy. If it doesn't work, then I'll just throw that crappy plastic cam back in it, I think. Another thing I wanted to touch on was the governor arm job I did. I'm not sure what to call that, but so in my first video, I cut this and I put a flat washer on the bottom. I ran it through, and then I used the clamp and the clip from the stock setup just to keep it in place. And the more thinking I did on it, the more I was just thinking that oil is just going to puke out of here just gradually. And like I said, I'm riding off-road, so it's going to be dirt and sand, rocks. I don't want that collecting here, because that's a common issue with this. At least in the last 196, I did this too. Before I plugged the hole. So I put an O-ring at the bottom. Just a generic set I got off Amazon. I got a little O-ring kit. So hopefully that will cut down on leakage from here. And if I have major issues, I'm just going to coat the whole thing in RTV and shove it in there. But that's what I did to kind of experiment with the leakage situation there. I would like to put a hose barb and run a pump off of it or something, or just have it vented, but like I said, this is not a race engine. I'm essentially just seeing what I could do with what I have. Next step I have is to torque the flywheel down. So in order to do that, you have to keep the crankshaft from rotating. Now I have this tool. Take your key. Make sure you got the key in. And then rotate that until it lines up right there. There you go. It's locked in. So now the crank cannot rotate. Now this was like a tool back when I bought when I was still working. So I think I want to say it was like $25 from Go Power Sports. And I don't know. I don't regret buying it, because if you've ever tried to torque one of these down, because you got to get, I want to say it's like, I got to double check, but it's like 50 foot-pounds at least. So you got to put a decent amount of pressure in. If that thing's rotating, it's impossible. So if you don't have one of these, you could take an old clutch or the backing plate off a torque converter, drill a hole through it, and then you could do the same setup. You just need a keyway on the shaft and a bolt hole here. And it might take some engineering or whatnot, but you know, if you're already this far, you just got to keep going. Now I've tried it before. Yeah, I tried to torque it down with one of these. I just put an adjustable and then had it running into the key. The issue with that is like you risk scarring up your crankshaft, messing up your key, and all that. And you could probably do it with an adjustable wrench if you had the proper leverage. But you have to be very careful with that. So, just an FYI. Now it's time to install the flywheel. So, got this valve grinding compound. If you do it correctly, you want to seat the flywheel to the crank. That's why it's tapered. You see, it's tapered down. It's actually kind of worn in to the original one. So, for it to be balanced, the taper on here needs to match the taper on the crank. So how you do that at home, hands are kind of dirty, but you take this valve grinding compound, which is essentially paste with like, I don't know if it's diamond powder in there or what, but it's a paste. You can tell it's an abrasive paste. So put this stuff on your crankshaft. It doesn't have to be a ton of it, just enough to kind of be coating the entire tapered end. And then take your flywheel and all the mating surfaces, or whatever you call those, rub it inside of there as well. Now the abrasion from the paste will it'll help with mating the two surfaces. And you can hear it. You hear that crunch? So you don't want to go crazy with this. And I've never done it with this style aftermarket flywheel. I don't know how soft the aluminum is. So essentially, you just rotate this back and forth, apply a little pressure, and make sure it goes all the way around. You want the two pieces to wear into each other, but mostly You want it on the flywheel side, or at least that's my impression. I did a little much. Let's see. How I learned. Wipe it off. Oh yeah. Wipe it off. Yeah, I'd say that's good. So you might ask, I'll get you a close-up, show you what it's supposed to look like. But you might ask why you gotta do this, and essentially the nut going on the thread, that's not what holds the flywheel on. I mean, that keeps it from flying off, yes. But in order to have the flywheel balance on the shaft, and what am I trying to say? The proper way is the flywheel needs to be seated on the taper of the shaft, not necessarily held on by the nut, even though the nut is supposed to keep it from coming off in case of an impact. But really what holds this on is the torque. When you push this down, it seats it onto the taper. That's why when you go to take it off, you gotta like pry on it and then pop it off, because once it goes on that taper, it's not supposed to get off. So check this out. I'm gonna get the remaining crud out of there. Get you a close-up. You want this line. You see how the abrasion caused the difference in that to here? The roughness of this will help hold that flywheel on. And you want this to go all the way around. That way you know it's like the consistency of really fine sandpaper. And you also want a matching, let's see if I can show this. You want it to match on the inside of here as well. So, the lighting's kind of bad, but hopefully I explained that in a way you can understand. And if I'm wrong about anything, let me know. So I'm going to clean this up and we'll get to torquing it down. Something else I wanted to go over before I hide this with the flywheel. This is the governor, not the pitman arm. What do you call it? It's just a governor rod that the governor rotated on. I pushed it in from the inside out. So, I don't know if you watched the first video. I had to punch this back out and flip it around because the longer side of it was interfering with the flywheel. But if you put the shorter side in with the taper pushing out towards this side, towards the flywheel, you won't have any contact issues, and you don't have to cut this piece, which is cool because the taper on there makes it easy to get in there. So in case you were wondering about clearance issues with the flywheel and using the rod from the governor to plug that hole, that's what I had to do to make it work. And it'd be pretty easy to cut if you did have to. Different engines will probably have slightly different variations in measurements. Just another FYI. And I kept this piece here in case I ever want to put my inner coil back on. Alright, now it's time to torque that down. I looked it up. It's 65 foot-pounds, which I was kind of remembering. I got a big torque wrench. It's a trick I learned from my dad. So you don't wear your battery out. Unplug it every time. And I've had this 2 years, so battery's still working. Set at 75. I know digital is like cheating, but like cheating and cheating are not the same. I'm gonna go ahead and just set it at 65. Never did me wrong before. Then I'll take my 21 mil. This will be a test of my curling strength. So I got 2 bolts in my bench, but there's nothing there's nothing holding them in. So side to side is fine, but if it goes up, it's gonna tip. So I gotta keep a hand on it, and then with my right arm torque it down. There we go. Got a beep. Another beep. Let's see how close it is. Here we go. Torque down. These things, man. This is a Cobalt. So, I think you can get these at Harbor Freight. Awesome. Up next, got to set the coil gap. Alright, so the coil gap can be a tricky part. And if you don't know what that is, essentially it is literally the gap between the coil and the flywheel. And how it runs is the magnet on the flywheel passes by the coil here, and that causes a charge every time it goes by. Boom, 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 and that's how you get fire. Gotta love it. So I've taken a piece of paper, hardware bag, and I measured it at 0.40. I'm just gonna, I'm going off the go-kart guys here. And essentially I made myself a feeler gauge with this piece of paper. As long as you can measure it, paperwork's real great. Business cards, I don't have any, so that's why I'm using this. Paperwork's great because it bends. You can essentially just keep a little pressure on your coil, not too much because it is paper, you can crush it. And I'm going to snug it up. I'm going to snug it up right there. Now if I measured and I did it correctly, this should be very close to a 0.040 gap, which is what the go-kart guys are running. It gives you a little bit advanced timing at higher RPMs, and that's a little tricky once you start racing and all that. And, you know, you get one guy telling you one thing, another guy saying a completely other issue. But for me, this is just a cruiser, and I'm doing off-road. I ain't racing, so kind of want to get it close to stock. You want to make sure it looks as even as you can get. And if I need to tune it, I'll come back. I do have digital calipers. That could be an invaluable tool when it comes to working on these things. So if I do, I'll take my piece of paper or whatever else I have laying around, figure out what kind of gap. They could be running up to 65 thousandths, I believe, which is 0.065. So the bigger the gap, the more you could run RPMs and still be burning up the fuel that you're shoving in the cylinder head. Because at a certain point, if this is spinning, so fast that it's outpacing your fire that's running, then it's going to start running like crap, and you'll be running great at, say, like 3,000 to 4,000 RPMs. Well, once you get up over 7,000 RPMs, it's going to start breaking up, running like crap, you know. So that's more for racing. I just want it to run and be reliable. And if any of you guys got any input on that too, because I honestly don't know an insane amount about this, let me know. I'm always looking for more knowledge. So there we go. Flywheel's torqued. Coil gap is set at 0.040, which I think will be just fine for me. Stock coil anyways. Yeah, on to the intake. Alright, so this is the part I'm really excited about. Ordered this custom intake. I believe it was from Go-Karts USA. And this is the original gasket. It's kind of hokey, but it's still good, so I'm going to try to run it. So, here's the intake. And if you saw the beginning of the video, I showed this already mounted up. But I had to pull the head, so I pulled it off. There's an O-ring right here. I reused the original gasket that came off the head. And I did kind of try to soak it in oil a little bit, but not sure that actually helps or not. So here goes. Alright, so this intake I really think is like the shining piece of the whole build. It's gonna make it stick out a little bit because you don't really see these, because you either have to make it yourself or buy one. And I bought one, and this thing is like 70 bucks. And I get it, you know, the welds are good and all that, but it's pretty pricey, dude. But the whole reason I decided to bite the bullet and do it, because I can swap this to almost any of my 196s or 212s. And this piece, the one thing that always bothered me about upgrading to a real motorcycle carburetor was how far they stuck out. The thing is, you put that 2-inch extender on there, and then you have the full carb about here, and then the filter off, so by the time you're done, your thing's sticking out like that. And I ride mini bikes, I don't really do the go-karts. So every time you lay the bike down, which you ride off-road, you're going to, regardless, you rip your filter, or you crush it, or the bag on your filter rips, or you hit your tuning screw and it gets all out of whack, you know. So once a flywheel cover is on there, just for mocking up, we'll do this. It's in line, does not stick out past. There will be a pull cord here, so it's even going to be farther out. So you lay the bike down, this will be more protected. I am going to run, this is the crappy filter, it's not even epoxied in there or anything, so I have a different filter I'm going to run. And this is the one part I did not skimp on. I already had the carb from a previous build that didn't work out. So yeah, man, I just think it's going to be great with the engine stand lifted and then pushed forward a little bit. The carb relocated to where it's more on top of the engine. I have a gas tank mounted in a regular motorcycle fashion, so it should gravity feed, but I'm going to have a pulse pump anyways. Because like I said, I'm going to be doing hill climbs, stuff like that. All the fun stuff. But yeah, I think that just makes it for me. It's going to be sweet. I'll show you the header I got. Now this header I bought like 6 years ago. But with that intake, this header, I was already running it with this header, but I pulled it off to paint it. So it'll look something like that. Just a little sneak peek. It's gonna look sweet. Now I've got to the part of the video where I'm looking forward to it, but also kind of not. This was my first mini bike. It's a Baja Warrior. I bought it in 2016, and I've done a lot of stuff to this. Downgrades, upgrades. This headlight was pretty cool. That's a stock 196. I pulled the governor out and I didn't do the flywheel, so it's all out of balance and it's basically pulling itself apart. This is the stock engine, and this thing hauled butt, man. But so I got the 30 series torque converter. I will be taking this, putting it on the MB200S. That's the plan. And I got some new tires to it. Preview. So the idea is I'm going to take this flywheel cover, the whole thing, put it on my engine over there. And so I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to rob it. I'm going to rob the torque converter and any other various little pieces I need. But this was my first mini bike build. With the Baja Warrior, I cut the fenders, put these taillights. I was using it as turn signals, or turn signals as taillights, but I never actually wired them in. They look sweet and all that. So the idea is I'm going to build the 196 that I am working on right there. And that engine will eventually replace this one. And then I'll get the 212 in that one whenever I'm fully strong enough. So that's the idea. I got some shocks for that too. My back's all messed up, so I need these things to be a little higher quality than they come factory. Not too much, because they're basically toy grade. Whenever we do that, and I'll have a key wired up. I'm getting ahead of myself though, but that'll be coming. This is my donor bike, and it kind of hurts me to pull it apart, but basically this engine's toast anyways. So, hasta la vista. You might wonder why I chose to go with this flywheel cover. You know, it's more aesthetics. But I've always been more of a... I like to see the wear on things. Even when I was a kid, I used to just run my Tonka trucks through The dirt probably drive my parents crazy, but I liked them when they had a little bit of use to it. And I never really figured out why, but this one, bought that bike in 2016. Oh man, I put some miles on this. And personally, I like the square look of these things way more than the round look. So on all the Predator engines, they have these, it's just a round flywheel cover. Everybody knows what they look like. Well, on the old Bajas, you got the cool Baja 200cc, you know, everybody knows it's a 196, but I just think that's a little more unique than you usually see. And my whole idea with this bike is to like try to make it as unique as I can. So I'm going with the square look because I don't know if you remember what my mini bike looks like that it's going on. But I got the square tank up top. This is off of 301. So you also don't really see that too much. I've only seen like a couple other guys that put the square tanks up top. Everybody else does the little peanut tanks. And that's a tank off a Honda Z50. I thought it went perfect with the Baja Warrior. Now for this one, I'm going for more of an enduro kind of look. So I pulled the round headlight off, and I was thinking about using that as a headlight housing. So essentially the whole bike will kind of have this square vintage look. And I'm kind of basing that off of my full size. And this is my baby right here. But my favorite bikes are the dirt bikes from the 90s. And they got all, you know, the big dorky mirrors, the big old hand guards and all that. I'm just not at that point where I can ride this again yet. And I can't get back there, but if you know what they look like, they got big square headlights. And I was born in the 90s, so square headlights, and my dad always drove the old square body Fords. Or, oh, not square body, they're bull nose. Whatever you call them. Everything growing up, it had more of a, I know I'm dating myself, but it just had more character back there, you know? Everything got rounded off in the 2000s. This all became like melted butter. Everything's kind of neutered. So, no offense to anybody that wants to run whatever, so this is just my reasoning behind this piece right here. And the whole thing is supposed to be unique, right? I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. That's Fluffy. She's my shop assistant. Let's go. You might notice I forgot to put this when I torqued the flywheel, so I had to take that off, re-torque it down. Long story short, if you do it once, you can do it again. Don't let mistakes get you down, because you're going to make them. Now I want to test fire this thing today. Just put oil in it. So now to get the electricals in order. This piece, this is a crazy long bolt for what it is, but I think they do that just so there's a good solid ground. But that's also something I should have done before torquing the flywheel down. So make these videos so you can learn from my mistakes. Yep, I'm going to have to take the flywheel back off once more. So I went to go put the electricals back on, and then I realized I put the flywheel on and I need to get this bolt back in here. I don't know if any of you guys noticed that in the video too, but this piece cannot, the way it's designed right now, I need yeah, very annoying, but it's the way it goes. Not gonna get it right every time the first time. In fact, more than likely you'll have to do it 2 or 3 times, and I literally just said that. So the bolt for this one is crazy long. It's just as simple as that, but it's impossible. You cannot get that bolt with the flywheel on already. So before you put that on, and make sure you got your electricals in order. And like, pretty annoying, but like I said, what are you gonna do, man? You can't just let it get to you. So keep doing that over and over and over. Alright, I left that in there just to show you how tedious it can be getting these things back together. Tins are all on though. So I'm kind of doing the long form video, long form. I want people to understand just how much time it takes to work on these things. Because even if I make an hour-long video, that's still a couple hours, 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes working. And it's because of little things, like when you have it, that piece. This one was all bent, so you kind of had to get it back. And that one's very easy to cross-thread. And a lot of times you watch these videos and they're only 15 minutes long and you're like, oh, sweet. I can just bing, bang, boom, take it apart, and you don't realize, oh, you need this tool for that, this tool to do something else, and they edit out all the hard stuff, is what I'm saying. So I want to edit out most of the bull crap, but I want people to understand, especially you young guys and girls, whoever you are working on these things, even if you're a little bit older, that it takes time, and you got to be patient, and you got to learn to exercise that patience. Because if you don't, you cut corners, you'll do like what I did with the green bike. Its engine's toast because I didn't want to do the work, but it's ended up costing me doing more work in the long run. Alright, got the engine in the frame, electrical's hooked up. I threw the header on just for, I'm going to try to test start this thing. So I rigged up a temporary little thing out of a oil catch can, fuel line. Got a little shut off here. So it's an oil catch can I never used. So let's throw some gas in it. I'm just gonna put a caps full, like a paint cap. I'm gonna try not to spill it. Oh, you know what? Might look kind of silly. I'm gonna double up. Yeah, let's pull back a little bit. I'm gonna double up the funnel. I don't want to spill gas. Oops. Note to self. One of these is more than one of those. Now let's turn the fuel on. And I can hear the fuel going in the bowl. So I was thinking that would be about one bowl's worth of fuel. Oh, almost forgot to put the throttle needle in. Give me one moment. Puffed off a little bit. Think I'm gonna have to pull it. Alright, I'm going to try one more time and I'll feel like a fool if it fires up and I'm not filming. Let's go. Fire coming out of there. So, can't get the engine started. I'm guessing that's a coil gap issue. My back's all messed up, so I can't keep yanking on the cord. Gonna have to end the video here, but before that, I wanted to show you what I had going on as far as the lighting system. So this won't be the light I'm going to use. It's just for demonstration. It's like a little fog light. I got a couple lights coming. So let me start at the battery. I got this little Mighty Max. And I had this little fuse box. So what I did, I took PVC cement and I just cemented this fuse box to the battery. So right off the bat, you have to go through the fuse to get out and to get back into the battery. Not crazy important with the mini bikes, but I'm just doing it for the sake. I'm going to use this to ground it to the bike itself. Use the bike as part of the circuit. This came off. This clamp's just to hold the taillight on. This is the taillight I decided to go with. It's just a marker light off of a trailer. Had a nice little chrome border, and so I made this bracket. I'll put some photos at the end here of kind of that process. That was pretty. I had used a grommet here. I sliced it, running there, just kind of waterproofing it. The whole thing's resonated or whatever you call it, set in resin. So you don't really have to do that, but a little overkill never hurts. So this will be the headlight side of the harness, and controlling the whole thing will be the switch. Uh-oh. And my hooked them up wrong. Unless my light broke. Oh, there it goes. So everything goes back to this switch here, which I'll have mounted under the front of the bike somewhere. It's a switch out of like a tractor or a big rig. Pull to turn on, push to turn off. I like it because it's real rugged and it's got that vintage look to it. Again, I got this at CarQuest. The distribution center near my house is shutting down, so I went to go check out the parts they got because I used to work there. I know all the goodies that are hiding back there. So yeah, there's the beginnings of my lighting system. I'm contemplating using this as a battery tray, which is just an exhaust shield, but it might be better just to go ahead and start from scratch for the battery tray. I did that for the bracket and it turned out pretty good. And the bracket, this will sit up under the rear seat. It'll be protected. Next video I'll go ahead and mount that up once I get the engine running. And again, I am a bit disappointed with that, but I kind of guessed with the timing. So I got a couple burps out of the engine, so next time I'm gonna have to work on this off camera, but shaping up pretty good, I think. I'll get that header wrapped. But as far as the headlight goes, I ordered some square fog lights, and I'm thinking about using this. Maybe cut this out and do some kind of, I don't know, utilitarian looking Mad Max, like driving to the Thunderdome kind of vibe. But that'll end this video for today. A little disappointing. I wasted a lot of time doing things I shouldn't have. Like I said, I've been doing this for a while, but it never really stops, you know. Learning, as far as, you know, you gotta keep on learning. That's the important part. I think most of these pieces you could slide together and make an entire housing out of that. That'd be pretty cool, but who knows? I might just make something from scratch. Sometimes it's harder to make something work than to just start from zero. Love that switch though. That's my favorite part of the whole thing. So it's these little accent pieces that really keep me going on this project. There's a lot of setbacks, but you know, like I said, I was injured last year, so I can't even if I did get this thing running today, I can't ride it. So I shattered my femur in April of 2023, and I'm still recovering from that. I have a full rod from the tip of my femur up there, about 12 screws holding it all together. I can bend it and move it, but it's very weak. Just the other day I slipped and fell in the driveway, and that was a huge setback for me. I couldn't barely move after that. Couldn't really pick anything up. That's part of the delay for the videos. But I'm just mostly just enjoying working on these things. And I got the whole thing planned. I got some shocks going. Got some shocks still in the box. I got some brand new Sun Fs. The real aggressive ones. Oh, that's cracking. But it'll be coming together soon. And if you're still watching, thank you.